At some point in life, we all know someone who suddenly disappears. They stop replying to messages, avoid calls, leave social circles, and distance themselves from everyone, sometimes without explanation. This behavior is often misunderstood and quickly labeled as cold, selfish, or dramatic. In reality, psychology reveals a much deeper and more complex story. Cutting everyone off is rarely impulsive. It is usually the final result of long-term emotional strain, unmet needs, and silent internal battles. People who cut everyone off are often dealing with emotional overload. Many of them have spent years giving more than they receive. They are the listeners, the supporters, the ones others lean on during hard times. Over time, this constant emotional output leads to psychological burnout. When the mind and nervous system reach their limit, withdrawal becomes a survival response. In these cases, isolation is not rejection, it is self-preservation behavior. Ironically, highly empathetic individuals are among the most likely to retreat because they absorb emotional pain more deeply than others. Another powerful reason behind cutting people off is repeated betrayal. When trust is broken again and again, the brain begins to associate relationships with danger. Instead of confronting each painful experience individually, the mind forms a protective shortcut. It concludes that distance is safer than vulnerability. This reaction is not immaturity or weakness, it is a trauma response. Emotional wounds teach the brain that isolation reduces the risk of being hurt again, even if it also reduces joy and connection. For many people, trauma plays a central role in social withdrawal. Emotional neglect, abandonment, manipulation, or chronic invalidation can shape how someone connects with others. Over time, they may develop avoidant attachment patterns. Relationships begin to feel unpredictable and overwhelming. Control becomes essential for emotional safety, and isolation offers that control. When someone can decide who has access to them, or choose no one at all, it creates a sense of stability that relationships no longer provide. Some individuals cut everyone off because they lost themselves while trying to maintain relationships. They compromised their values, ignored their boundaries, and silenced their needs to keep others comfortable. Eventually, the psychological cost becomes unbearable. Distancing from everyone becomes an attempt to rediscover identity. It is not about punishing others, it is about finding space to ask important questions, like who they are, what they want, and what they will no longer tolerate. In this context, isolation is a delayed form of self-respect. Depression also plays a central role in social withdrawal, though it often goes unnoticed. Depression does not always look like sadness. Sometimes it appears as detachment, silence, and emotional distance. People experiencing depression may genuinely believe they are a burden to others. They withdraw not because they do not care, but because they believe others are better off without them. This creates a painful cycle where isolation deepens emotional pain, reinforcing negative beliefs and increasing loneliness. Not everyone who cuts people off is running from pain. Some are moving toward clarity. As emotional intelligence develops, tolerance for shallow or draining connections decreases. After personal growth, individuals may realize that constant misunderstanding or emotional imbalance is more harmful than solitude. In these cases, social withdrawal reflects emotional selectivity. Being alone feels healthier than being surrounded by people who do not respect boundaries or emotional depth. Despite common assumptions, people who disappear are rarely emotionless. In fact, many feel too deeply. They sense emotional shifts, unspoken tensions, and hidden motives more intensely than others. When there is no safe space to express these feelings, silence becomes their language. Cutting people off is not a lack of care. It is often a response to caring too much in environments that do not offer emotional safety. Modern social dynamics also contribute to this behavior. Social media has blurred boundaries, increased comparison, and created pressure for constant availability. For some, this continuous emotional exposure leads to social fatigue.
Stepping away becomes a way to protect mental health, reduce overstimulation, and regain a sense of control in a world that never stops demanding attention. It is important to recognize that isolation is not always harmful. When intentional and temporary, it can serve as a powerful tool for healing. Solitude can bring emotional clarity, strengthen emotional boundaries, and increase self-awareness. The problem arises when isolation becomes permanent and fear-based rather than purposeful. Humans are wired for connection, and long-term social withdrawal can reinforce trauma and distort perceptions of reality. People who cut everyone off are not broken, heartless, or beyond help. Most are individuals who reached a breaking point after prolonged emotional burnout, unresolved trauma, or repeated disappointment. Understanding this behavior requires empathy instead of judgment. Sometimes walking away is the only way someone knows how to survive when communication has failed and emotional needs have been ignored. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, remember that isolation may protect you temporarily, but connection is what ultimately heals. The goal is not to let everyone back into your life. The goal is to choose the right connections, ones that respect your emotional boundaries, value your presence, and allow you to be authentic. Growth often begins in silence, but it does not have to end there.